There is something about music that encourages vulnerability. Great hymns that inspire hope, courage, and obedience keep us in touch with our Christian heritage. A Mighty Fortress takes us back to the Reformation and allows us to hear the words of Martin Luther. Joyful, Joyful exposes us to the music of Beethoven and allows us to revel in the melodic mastery of one of the great composers in church history. Hymns remind us of our founders, our history, and our doctrinal distinctives. Hymns embed Christian truths in our minds and hearts. They engage intellect, imagination, and emotion. Christian concepts are tucked away in our minds, ready to be pulled out when we need them. Many were put there by the repeated singing of the great hymns. Our hymns have taught us that God is faithful, that He provides a firm foundation for our lives, that His love will not let us go, and that we should take time to be holy. Let's listen in as we share in hymns that inspire hope, courage, and obedience.
The hymn that we are exploring today is entitled, "In the Garden." It is fondly remembered by the first line, "I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God disclosing." Originally, when this hymn was written, it was not allowed to be included among the hymns to be sung in church. The reason for that is that some people thought that this was a hymn just praising nature. However, when we discover the history behind the hymn and the words of the hymn, we will see that it is a different matter altogether. This hymn was written by Austin Miles, and he himself gives an account of how this hymn was written. He says that one day in the month of April 1912, he was sitting in a dark room where he kept his photographic equipment and organ. He says he drew his Bible toward him and he opened to his favorite chapter, John chapter 20. And he says he does not know whether it is by chance or by inspiration. He said he'd let those who read about his life figure that out. There in John chapter 20, he reads the account of Mary meeting Jesus. He sees that Jesus had not lost any of his power or his charm there in that garden. And a few years later, he said, as I read John chapter 20 that day, I seemed to be part of the scene. For him, it appears as if he was transported. He was transported to the very garden where Mary and Jesus was. And he participates in the conversation with them as a silent listener. He becomes a silent witness to that dramatic account and moment in Mary's life when she knelt there before her Lord and she cried out, Rabboni, when she cried out, O God and teacher. He says that when he began to imagine this and when he felt himself transported to the garden, his hands was resting on the Bible and he stared at his light blue wall. As the light faded, he said, I seemed to be standing at the entrance of the garden, looking gently along a winding path shaded by olive branches. A woman in white, with bowed head, hand clasping her throat as if to choke back her sobs, he says, she walked slowly into the shadows. It was Mary. And it is as if he himself joined Mary as she came to the tomb upon which she placed her hands. She bent over to look inside and hurried away. There he saw, in this transported state, he saw John in his flowing robe. He also witnessed Peter, who also entered the tomb and left. As they departed, he says, Mary reappeared, leaning her arm on the arm of Jesus, and she begins to weep. Turning herself, she saw Jesus standing, and there, Miles said, there is where he found himself standing also and facing Christ. He says, I was awakened in sunlight and gripping the Bible with muscles as tense and nerves vibrating. He says, under the inspiration of this vision that I had, I took my pen and as quickly as possible, I jotted down the words that you and I are exploring today. I come to the garden alone. That very evening, he wrote the music for the words of this beautiful hymn. Let us go straight into the hymn. The second stanza of this hymn says, he speaks, talking about Jesus. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. And then the refrain says, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He ends this beautiful hymn by saying, I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night all around me be falling. But he bids me go through the voice of woe. His voice to me is calling. The refrain of this beautiful hymn invites us to have a personal encounter and walk with Jesus. The Miles' experience of being alone in the garden of Jesus, with Jesus, he wanted to write this hymn so that you and I, in the busyness of this world, in the chaotic schedule of this world, in the pursuit of happiness and fulfilling all our life's dreams and desires, we would pause a moment and join Miles and go to the garden alone. I like this hymn very much because this hymn speaks about meeting Jesus alone. It highlights one aspect about salvation. We are not saved en masse. No, we are saved individually. Yes, this hymn speaks about having a personal encounter with Jesus Christ. It reminds me of a chorus I learned as a young boy. Not my brother, not my sister, but it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my father, not my mother, but it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not the elder, not the deacon, not the preacher, not the teacher, but it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. And when I think about the chorus of that song, it's me, O Lord. I can't help myself by tying it up with the refrain of this beautiful hymn. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joys we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. Yes, dear friend, the joys and the experiences, the bliss and the peace and calm you would experience by spending alone time with Jesus is a peace and calm that your friends, your parents, your family, and those around you would never understand. Because it is only those who have had a close walk with Jesus are able to tell you the experience of walking with him. It reminds me of the verse in the Bible that says, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good, that his mercy endures forever. As you listen to the words of this beautiful hymn, as sung by Bronwyn, I pray that God would impress upon your heart to pause wherever you are and take a moment to enter into that garden with Jesus. Not a literal garden, but that quiet moment in an isolated space where you walk with Jesus. Open his word and let his word talk to you, and you in turn pray with him. I pray this would be your prayer as you listen to this song.
I come to the garden alone while the dew
Thank you, Bronwyn, for the beautiful rendition of this hymn. I come to the garden alone. It is a call for us to prayer. It is a call to meditation. It is a call to devote quiet time to God. Sometimes we want to hear God's voice. Sometimes we wonder what is God's will for our lives. It may just be that God has already spoken or that God is still speaking, but because we are not pausing, we are not listening and hearing His voice. I pray that this will be our prayer also. I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and let the voice you hear be the voice of Jesus Christ. That should be our earnest desire and plea. As we go into this short break, I pray that you will remain with us as we get back to discover a more closer walk with Jesus.